Hey guys, welcome back to What the Fat. Today we're doing something a little bit different than we've normally done. So instead of the micro podcast this week, I've been getting a lot of questions and I wanted to address this and talk about the top 10 questions. We've vetted them out and we're going to go into a live that I'm going to be recording so you guys can see firsthand and hear some of the questions that get commonly asked, and hopefully there's some that you guys have submitted or that you've heard a lot of. So stay tuned and I appreciate you guys jumping on. Hey guys, Dr. Lowery coming to you. Oh boy, it's been a crazy week. I was talking to the team and I was like, you know what? I promise every week we got to jump on because you guys always ask incredible questions. I get a ton of DMs, so it's easier for me to just jump on and answer them. And last week was a crazy whirlwind, being in New Jersey, New York, all over the place. So wanted to jump on. Wanted to talk to you guys, and we have a bunch of questions lined up, but appreciate you guys jumping on. Last week was, like I said, it was a whirlwind. Flew home on Tuesday. We'll put a whole YouTube video out about the entire trip actually, but flew home on Tuesday, gave away 3 scholarships to some incredible kids that are doing amazing work, that are all going on to college, so that was really fulfilling and rewarding. And then had a couple of meetings, again down in South Jersey. Did a keto meetup on Saturday right after I got a tattoo. And then Sunday was our COO, Sam Beeler's wedding. Beautiful ceremony. He got married this weekend. So crazy week. Excited to be back in the saddle though. We have a ton going on. So with that being said, guys, you know the drill. I'm here to answer any questions. We'll do this again on Friday, but it's the beginning of the week. I'm wearing my new shoes, Positivity and Optimism from Gary Vee. They're badass. So, love them. But you guys know the drill. Ask questions below. Let me know any questions that you guys have, and we're gonna answer some questions. So what's the first question?
Alrighty, first question. What's the biggest research being studied right now in regards to ketones?
So honestly, in regards to ketones, I think it's understanding that they are a superior fuel source than glucose. It's understanding that a lot of research is being done in the cognitive aspect. Things like traumatic brain injury, which we're actively studying, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, things that center around neurological conditions. That's where I think ketones have a huge application, one of the biggest applications in the world. And so we're seeing promising results with traumatic brain injury, former NFL guys, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's patients. We literally have a guy, and we actually showed this at Keto Academy. We were speaking at a couple weeks ago. We literally have a guy, and this is how crazy and powerful that ketones and having that superior fuel source can be, is we have a guy in our facility that was an incredible athlete. He literally has to wear a necklace around his neck that identifies and alerts someone that he's lost, because it happens so frequently. But he could go out to the store and walk down the street and have no idea where he is. Like, that's sad to realize that someone's living in that state, and to see him after just 30 minutes after taking exogenous ketones rapidly change. He's elated, feels incredible, his cognitive focus is 10 times better. I mean, that's that's so fulfilling for us when we're looking at researching exogenous ketones and all of their potential applications. So I mean, that's probably one of the most promising areas that exogenous ketones are being studied right now.
Question 2. What are your thoughts on the carnivore diet?
When's the video going live? Saturday. The video's going live on YouTube. A full explanation. Chelsea and I broke down my results on carnivore. I talk a little bit about how I felt. All in all, in summary, I mean, I felt good on a carnivore diet. I definitely was less bloated. I was hungry in the beginning until I allowed myself to adapt, because I'm used to eating a ton of volume, right? Going from a ton of volume to eating just meat is a little bit challenging, but it ended up subsiding by the end. I did miss my Cobb salads for sure, but I definitely felt less bloated. And so I'm gonna make sure that you guys go check out the YouTube video to find out all of the results. We literally looked at blood markers, gut microbiome data, deuterium levels, which like no one's even looking at. So go check that out. Definitely a lot of interesting results, and I think it can be a great tool in your toolbox to utilize.
What's the meaning behind your tattoo?
I haven't even showed him yet. So I gotta stand up. So here's the tattoo. I don't know if you guys can see that. It looks good on screen. There's a band. It's like there's a Band-Aid still on it. So I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's basically Scoot, a paw, and then one of my favorite things, kind of like the core of who I am and what I stand for, on there as well. But in essence, obviously you guys have known, if you've followed me for a while, that Scoot's had a huge impact on my life since I've gotten him. I haven't even had him for a year yet. That's crazy. August 5th will be a year that I've had Scoot. And he's taught me so much, and people are probably like, you're crazy for thinking that a dog can teach you so much. But in essence, he's taught me that literally no matter what hand you're dealt in life, because he comes from a abused background, he was abused and ended up breaking one of his front legs. They had to amputate it, that's why he only has 3. But literally whatever background you come from, he still is so happy, so excited, lives in the moment, and is just the most incredible. He does not let anything hold him back. The guy will jump off of anything without any fear, even if it means smashing his face on the ground. He gets up and he's smiling, and it gives you that sense of like, wow, like if he can do it, like what the heck am I doing? So I wanted to pay a huge tribute to him for what he's done in my life. And then the Be Here Now, it's multiple things. One, it's one of my favorite documentaries. If you haven't seen it, check out, there's a documentary called Be Here Now that's amazing. But in essence, it's about being present. It's being in the moment. And it's literally one of the things I talk all about is perspective and positivity, right? So the perspective that like you're here, you're alive today and someone else isn't. You woke up today and someone else didn't. Like that whole concept. And for me, it's a constant reminder to be present wherever I'm at. And for those of you who haven't already seen my results from the Dr. Amen clinic, the brain scans, like if you saw my brain, it's all over the place, right? I have a million things going on at all times. And the guy, the Dr. Ali actually mentioned, he's like, hey, it's probably very difficult for you to be present in the moment. And that was a big reality check for me, because it is. And I think a lot of times I talk about it so often. I talk about presence. I talk about being present in the moment, being here now all the time, that people might think, oh, that comes easy for him, right? He must be able to just be so dialed in, so focused on in every single moment. And it's actually the complete opposite. It's extremely hard for me to do it, but it's such a priority and it's so important for me to do it that I want to be present in every moment. So like wherever I'm at, whatever I'm doing, it's a constant reminder to me that whoever I'm with, whatever I'm taking on at that moment, like be fully there, be fully present, because I think so much of our life, our time, our what we're experiencing passes us by because we're not present. And you guys might be one of those people, or you might know someone who's like, oh, I felt like so long ago, like what happened over the last 6 months? Like, I can't believe it flew by. Well, the reason it flew by is because you're not there, right? You're not seeing and picking up every single moment and being present when in reality you can be. Why? Because we're distracted, we're on our computers, we're texting, we're talking to someone and having another conversation with someone else at the same time. And life passes us by that way. So for me, it's a constant reminder like, hey, be here now. Scoot is a perfect example of that. He literally is present every single moment that I'm with him, and like he literally waits by the door for when I get home, excited as hell when I walk in that door, because he doesn't know if I left him. He doesn't know if I was ever going to come back. But the minute I walk in that door, I'm fully present for him and he's fully present for me, understanding like, hey, nothing's promised. So I love that aspect. So it's a huge tribute to him and that concept of just being present and being in the moment.
Do you only ever talk about keto?
No, I talk. Hopefully, if you've seen lives, I've talked a lot more about it. I talk a lot about a bunch of different topics on What the Fat. But in essence, you can go check out one of the things I've been asked to do, and we're doing a lot more of, is putting out more blog articles. So if you guys haven't already checked it out, some of you may not even know this. It's very, very rudimentary. We're just starting it up, but go check out drlowery.com, Dr. Lowery.com. And on there, we have a couple of different blog posts. The first one that I ever put out was literally on why the day my ex-girlfriend got married was one of the happiest days of my life, for reasons that a lot of people probably don't think of. And then we just put out a blog post on how to not gain weight on your vacation, because I know a lot of people are getting ready to go on vacation or have gone, are planning on going on vacation. So I talked a little bit about how I went on a cruise where there's unlimited food, unlimited drinks, and how I prevented gaining a ton of weight while still enjoying myself and being present while I was there. And then next week we're gonna have one that's really interesting, because I wanted to utilize that outlet like as a different resource for people to just open up their mind and gain different perspective, right? If you guys know me, I like, ultimately at the end of the day, my mission is to help people gain perspective and positivity to live more fulfilled lives, whatever you're doing. If it's keto, if it's not keto, it's fine. I still love you. So that was the entire goal of it. I think if you want anything keto related, ketogenic.com is the resource for that, by no doubt about it. But I wanted to create a different perspective for to talk about other things that might not be keto related. So go check out Dr. Lowery. Next week we actually have an article coming out about a Netflix documentary that I watched that is completely against the grain, that a lot of you will be like, what the hell is he talking about? But I'll tease you with this. The title is called Hot Girls Wanted, and I talk about my thoughts on it. So go check. Make sure you stay tuned on Dr. Lowery if you want anything other than I'll talk about some health and nutrition stuff, but just general perspective and positivity aspects. drlowery.com.
Should I eat immediately after a workout or not to stay in IF window?
It ultimately depends on your goal. So should you eat immediately after your workout if you're intermittent fasting? It comes down to your goal, right? So if your goal is to put on muscle and your workouts consist of resistance training, then yes, you want to eat around that period, right? It's probably your most anabolic period. So you'd probably want to consume your calories and shift that window to around the time that you're working out. Now, if your goal is fat loss and you're really trying to do that, and you're doing more high intensity interval training or cardio, then it's fine to not eat around that workout period. So at the end of the day, just like everything else in life, it comes down to what is your goal. If your goal is to gain muscle, eat around that workout period, and all you have to do is just shift your window. So if you're eating for 12 hours a day, shift your window to eating around that workout versus later on in the day. So that's all it takes.
Why does LDL go up for some people while on keto?
Why does LDL go up for some people on keto? Great question. LDL and total cholesterol is really the question. Both of these tend to go up. Why? Well, in essence, you're eating more fat, right? So you're going to see more. Some people may see more total cholesterol or LDL. The question is, what's the significance of that? And the answer is very little. There's very little significance in elevated LDL and elevated total cholesterol. And I highly recommend checking out my friends, Dr. David Diamond, Dave Feldman. They talk about this nonstop, 24/7. But in essence, what you need to look for is, I talk about that you need to get an NMR, which basically takes a deeper dive. And we did this on the carnivore experiment and talked all about it. But you need to look at the very low density LDL and the particle size, things like that matter, right? Because LDL is just an arbitrary marker. Total cholesterol, an arbitrary marker. Actually, Dr. Diamond presents data that shows that people with, and this would freak out most MDs, people with higher amounts of total cholesterol tend to live longer, right? Think about that for a second. How many times have you seen a high cholesterol level and your doctor freaks out, right? Well, if they knew that maybe there's actually a correlation, and granted it's a correlation between higher amounts of cholesterol and living longer, maybe they wouldn't freak out as much. But it's just, I think it's a lack of knowledge and a lack of understanding of what that actually means, what blood lipids actually contribute to what, and how that plays an impact. So if you're concerned, the things you want to look for are, make sure you get an NMR to get a full panel of particle size, etc. You want to look at your triglyceride levels. You want to look at your hemoglobin A1C. You want to look at your HDL, which you'll get through that NMR. But in essence, those are way more important than total cholesterol or LDL. So stay tuned for that. Again, go check out the carnivore video on YouTube if you want to see kind of like what my experiment was like. But those are the things you should be looking for. Do not worry about elevated LDL or total cholesterol. Unless you have elevated all of the other things I mentioned, then that's something to probably look into. But make sure you're looking at your hemoglobin A1C, which is basically a rough estimate of like 3 months of your fasting, 3 to 6 months of your fasting insulin levels. So that's more important, along with triglycerides and VLDL, than total cholesterol by any means.
What breaks a fast?
Oh gosh. This is a question I get asked all the time. So what breaks a fast? It's kind of like keto, right? So it's kind of like when people say, I was actually having this conversation the other day with a friend of mine, and we were talking about it, and he's like, oh, keto? Like, that's the thing where you're eating like 90% of your calories is fat, right? And then I'll have the same conversation with like my uncle or someone in my family, and they'll be like, oh, keto, isn't that just really high protein, right? How many different definitions of keto have you heard? A ton, right? It's one of the reasons why we try to simplify it in the ketogenic Bible and be like, well, it's actually a metabolic state more than anything. But nonetheless, there's so many different definitions of keto. The same thing comes to fasting, right? How many different definitions of fasting have you heard? So fasting, by definition, is basically the avoidance of anything. No water, no salt, nothing. Like, you're a complete dry fast is what traditionally if you look textbook definition of what a fast would be. Now, are there other ways to mimic fasting, or there should be a better term? I don't know. We got to come up with a term. Someone here's got to come up with a term. Maybe we don't even call it fasting. We could create our own damn word to talk about the aspect where you're mimicking fasting, right? So in essence, like, can you have ketones? Can you have BCAAs? Can you have fat in your coffee? Are all these things the same? And the answer is yes. If you're trying to mimic fasting, I do believe there's the ability to consume calories without breaking the fast. And it sounds counterintuitive, but the reason is there's legitimately research showing, and this dates back to like the 70s and 80s, literally research showing that if you infuse someone with fat, there's no differences between someone who's completely just dry fasting and someone who's just purely being infused with fat. No differences. No differences in insulin, glucagon, glucose, ketones, nothing. No differences whatsoever. Now, the question is, how do you mimic that? So I do think by having black coffee with some MCT or coconut oil or butter or ghee, you can mimic that. I think exogenous ketones, as long as there's no sugar added, can mimic that. I think, what else? BCAAs, I think in context can mimic that, as long as it's straight BCAAs, no other fillers, no other additives, things like that. I think all of those can mimic fasting and not cause what we don't want, which would be the insulin spike, or a huge glucose spike or things like that. So I hate that it's the word fasting, because by nature fasting is avoidance of any calories whatsoever. But I think the goal in context is, how do you mimic that state? How do you mimic the benefits of what you're trying to achieve with a fast? And I do think you can achieve that with some of these other tools that would not break the fast.
What can I do if I seem to hit a weight loss plateau while I'm on keto?
Great question. And I think I get this question probably more than anything. What to do when I hit a plateau? And we're working on some things with ketogenic.com to target this, because one of the things that I think happens oftentimes is people go keto and they go without a proper foundation. And it's sad to see, because you guys know in anything in life, whatever you're trying to do, you need a proper foundation in order to build off of. So I think there's an optimal way to start keto and to have the basics and understanding, versus some people who just go in and they're trying, and I love that. They're taking the jump and they're just going in, but then they don't have the proper foundation. So these are the people that do it for 2.5 weeks, and then they're like, dang, that was too hard. I couldn't sustain it, blah, 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 blah. And like for me, I look at it and how much it's affected my family, my friends, the community, everyone around me, and I feel an obligation like, hey, we need to figure out a way to create an optimized system to help create a foundation. So we're working on that, and so stay tuned very soon on how to do that. But in essence, it starts with having a proper foundation, starting the right way, and understanding that there may be things, or maybe a time when you come to a plateau. What do you do in those scenarios? Well, one is make sure you're tracking your calories to see where you're at. A lot of times people either are severely undereating or significantly overeating. See where you're at and then adjust accordingly. But one of the best ones that I've used, and you guys have heard me say this, is bump up your protein. And again, people might freak out about it and go, oh, he's saying to bump up. No, because what often happens is people, especially females and males who are dieting, tend to undereat protein because they're so afraid of something known as gluconeogenesis that they don't eat enough protein. And because of that, they tend to stall out and they tend to get keto rash. They tend to see their hair falling out. These are symptoms of protein deficiency. So one of the easiest ways to get your calories up and kind of get your metabolism going again is bump up your protein. Use that, because protein is very, very, very difficult to store as fat. Understand that. So if you're eating one meal a day and you're having 30 grams of protein, you need to bump that up. Even if you're having 2 meals a day and you're having 40 grams of protein, you need to bump that up. It doesn't matter if you're male or female, you need to bump that up. And then at the same time, you can, again, use fat as a lever and bring that down. That's completely fine. So that's how I would avoid stalls, plateaus. If you're not using intermittent fasting, you can certainly incorporate that in. Or even if you are, shift the window. This is another big one. I haven't talked about this a lot, but intermittent fasting, it's the easy answer for people that go, oh, I've hit a plateau, what do I do? Well, fast longer. No, particularly if you don't like fasting, and you're like, no, I like food, going from condensing that window, it can lead to for some people can lead to disordered eating, and that's the opposite of what I want for people. I want people to make sure, cool, I can do this, I understand I'm not controlled by food, but how do I still have an intermittent fasting or an eating window where maybe I'm eating 6 to 8 hours, but still be able to make this a lifestyle? Well, one of the simple things to do, and I've found that this radically can transform someone's body composition very quickly, is if you're intermittent fasting, say you're fasting in the morning and you're eating from 12 to 8 o'clock, right? That's an 8-hour eating window. If you're hitting a stall and you're like, you know what? I'm willing to do whatever it takes, shift that window. So instead, maybe eat from 8 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I had to make sure I did that math right. So that's an 8-hour eating window, right? So shift it from eating. So now you eat breakfast and lunch instead of lunch and dinner. I've seen people, and I think, to be honest with you, I think that is the most optimal way to incorporate in intermittent fasting. However, I I don't think that it's necessarily sustainable for everyone, including myself, because at night, you're at home, you get home from a long day of work. It's a lot easier to eat lunch and dinner than it is to eat breakfast and lunch and skip and not have dinner, right? So I know a lot of you are very similar to me. Like I do lunch and dinner, and I typically intermittent fast during breakfast. But if I was trying to lean up, or like I was really focused on body composition, which I'm not, then one of the ways to overcome a plateau is to shift that window. Because studies show like eating earlier on in the day, like having breakfast and having lunch, can be significantly better for your body composition, meaning lower body fat, than eating lunch or dinner. So again, that's one option. I'm not saying you have to immediately do that, and then I don't want to get a bunch of messages about like, oh, it sucks, I'm not eating dinner, I'm not having quality time with my family, like I'm not present. That's not what I'm saying. I'd rather you be present and have quality time with your family if that happens during dinner. But if your goal is to overcome that plateau, one of the ways of doing that is shift that eating window. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's good.
How do you tell a loved one that you want them to try keto because you care about their health and wellness? I try to talk about the amazing research and benefits I've personally experienced, but they can never fully commit. But I know it would help them so much if they could just experience it themselves.
This is a tough one, right? And I think a question that a lot of you might have as well is, how do you get a loved one on board, right? How do you get someone that you care about, whether it's family, friends, colleagues? How do you get them? You show them all the research. You show them how excited you are. Things like that. It's very similar to how I got my mom to switch her mindset about smoking, and how I got my mom to actually switch her mindset about eating. And by all means, my mom isn't perfect. Well, she is perfect, but she's not perfect with her eating, and she still smokes. But it is significantly better than what it was before. And so for me, that's a win, right? Like for me, those are huge wins in my life, and they're things that I'm super excited about. But here's the thing, it can't be about you, right? So like if I were to go to my brother who's overweight, and I were to come to him and say, Steve, like it's embarrassing, you need to diet down, like you have your wedding coming up. He just got engaged, so I'm super pumped for him. You have your wedding coming up next year. You need to diet down. People are going to be looking at you. You need to fit into your suit. All of that is like, it doesn't appease to him, right? Like it's me taking my beliefs and putting them onto him of like what I feel is the outside perception. How do I allow someone to adopt it on their own is what's key. So for me, when I address my mom, like I told you guys the story, but for those of you who didn't hear it, literally for years, I bought my mom an e-cigarette for 4 years, and it was like a running joke in my family because I kept putting it underneath the first year I was like this little kid, I was a teenager, I was super excited. I'm like, I'm gonna do this, like my mom's gonna stop smoking. It's because I just took all of my savings, I invested it into an e-cigarette, and this is great. Like this is when e-cigarettes first came out, and I was super excited, and she opened up the box and she laughed and she's like, oh, you guys are funny, like this is sweet. And she's like, oh, I'll try. But you guys know, it's like one of those like, you're not really gonna try. It was like half-hearted. So next, I hadn't seen her try it at all, and then right before, a year later, I look underneath her bed and it's still in the wrapping, literally had not been opened underneath her bed. So I went under, I grabbed it, and we wrapped it back up, put it underneath the tree, and literally did this for 4 years, and she still never opened it up. And it was like dawned on me, and I was like, why is this never happening? And you guys know we work a lot with Tony Robbins, and he brought this concept up about like you have to get them to understand what's in it for them. They don't care about what's in it for you. And for me, it was always like, Mom, I want this. Like, I don't want you there, blah, 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 blah. Like, I want you to be alive when I have kids and this. And those are all things that I want, right? But what is she, even though she might want the same thing, I'm talking about it through a lens of what I want. And so for her, I sat down literally one day, wrote this entire note out, and I literally talked about like how amazing it would be, and like painted the picture in her mind of like one day she's going to have grandchildren, and those grandchildren are going to want to run around the backyard. They're going to want to spend time with their grandma and their grandfather, and they're going to be the biggest light of my life, the biggest joy in their lives, in my life, and how special I think it would be to her to have those moments and to cherish those moments with her grandchildren. And it was only at that moment that she shifted her mind and changed her perspective to go, you're right. Because I painted a picture so clearly in her head of what it would look like 10, 15 years down the road when I had grandchildren, of what that would be and what that would be like for her to live in that moment. And so for her, that's the shift that it took to go, you know what? I would love that. And yes, I am scared. Sure, it's an addiction. Sure, I'm smoking is an addiction, but I want to be in that moment. And I understand that this habit that I have isn't taking me closer to that. It's actually pulling me further away. So in a roundabout way, that's the same way to approach it with people. The only way I was able to get my brother to even entertain the idea of going keto is literally talking about the same thing. For him, I'm super excited about it because all of our family's going to be at our wedding, and I told him, he came to me, which was the best feeling in the world. Was Bud, I wanna do this. I want to make sure I'm in the best shape that I've been in the last couple of years before my wedding. And I told him, if I'm going to do anything, I need full and total commitment, and he's fully bought in. And 2, he understands that, it's a long game for him. He looks at this as, not a New Year's resolution, but this is a chance for him to be around friends and family, be a great partner, and literally start a new life in some essence. So for him, it was painting that picture of, listen, Bud, you're 30, I don't even know how old he is anymore. His birthday was 3 days ago, but he says 34, 35. You're in your mid 30s, and you're about to embark on this journey and completely have a significant other in your life, and you might have kids one day. You just have a brand new dog, and you're not able to run around with them because you're 320 pounds or 340 pounds or whatever it is. So, and you're having trouble walking up the stairs, things like that. It took that shift and that understanding in his mind of what's it going to do for him? What will keto do for me? I don't care what it's going to do for you. I don't care what it's going to do for you. I don't care what it's going to do for someone else. I care what it's going to do for me. And it took him for me to internalize that and make that for him to completely wrap his mind around that and understand, you know what, this is the right thing. This is what I want to do. Here's how I'm going to do this, and get it done. So that's what you have to do. That's the only way. And again, if you can only be there to support them, you cannot be down their throat trying to say, oh, I'm going to stop talking to you if you don't do this. That's never going to work. I think what you have to do is no matter what, you have to be there to support. So and show excitement. The minute he came to me and said, hey, I'm ready to do this. Can you put together something for the entire bachelor party and everyone that we're going to do this together and we're going to cut? I was pumped. I had to show him extreme excitement, just as weird, not training a dog. When I'm training Scooter and he does something great, you show extreme excitement and love, and that's how you reinforce it. So for me, it's reinforcing the good behaviors, not beating him over the head with the bad behaviors of are you serious? Are you really eating that right now? That's never going to work. That drives people into a downward spiral. What works is reinforcing the positives. When we go out and I'm with him and he orders a burger and gets a lettuce wrap, it's like he just won the lottery. I'm super excited about it. I reinforce it, tell him how proud I am of him, because I really am. That's a big step for someone just to make that small shift of cool, I'm going to change the bun of what I'm eating. Cool, that's awesome. That's a huge step. Reinforce that. And so I know that was a long answer, but I think that's a long-winded way of saying you can't force someone to do anything. You have to allow them to internalize it, and then you be there as a support mechanism to help support them and guide them through it, and understand that, like, listen, you're in this for the long game. And at the end of the day, if they know that you're out for their best interest and they build that, they have that trust with you, which hopefully if they're family, they already do, you have to build that trust and understand and let them know, like, I'm here for your best interest, and allow them to internalize it and understand what's it going to do for them, not what you want or what's your agenda or what you're trying to accomplish. So I think that's the best way to approach people, whoever it is, family, friends, loved ones, of how to embark on the journey with you. So is that it? Guys, that's all the questions for today. We'll be back live. We'll post something again this week. Appreciate you guys tuning on. I know it's a random time, but appreciate you guys being a part of the tribe. And again, if there's anything at all I can do for you guys, reach out, DM me. Go check out ketogenic.com for keto stuff. Go check out Dr. Lowery. Posted a really cool article on there recently about how not to gain weight on vacation. Facebook, Instagram, wherever. You guys know where to find me. Appreciate, love you guys. As always, make positivity louder. Be here now. Be in the moment. Love you guys. I'll talk to you later.